By January 2003, the crew for STS-107 had been training together for over 2 years. Their flight was a sort of black sheep in the space program's history. By the time they finally launched on January 16th, STS-107 had been delayed no fewer than 18 times. Their shuttle for that mission was Columbia. Since 1988, from 1988 to 2003, the shuttle program had completed successfully 87 missions in a row, each with their own specific mission objectives, their own different crews, each with their own personalities. But each one of those 87 flights did have two things in common: a safe launch and a safe landing. STS-107 was an oddity by 2003 because its mission was not to visit the ISS, but to involve nothing more dangerous than orbiting the Earth. Commander for STS-107 is Rick Husband with his pilot William McCool. David Brown is Chief Mission Specialist with Indian astronaut Kalpana Chawla, Michael Anderson, Laurel Clark, and Israeli astronaut Ilan Ramon. Their mission was to carry out 15 days of science experiments that the International Space Station was not yet outfitted to perform. They would use the Astrotech Space Hab module, this reusable module that we would fit into the shuttle's cargo bay in order to carry out these experiments. We finally launched the mission on January 16th, and Columbia went up successfully. From the first look of it, there was nothing wrong. It was a perfect launch as far as we could see at the beginning. These guys got up into orbit fine and spent their first day in orbit. On flight day 2, in the middle of the night, a group at NASA Mission Control performed a standard operation, and that is to review the launch using the tapes that we got back from these high-speed cameras that we use to film every shuttle mission, every shuttle launch. And two of these high-speed units had picked up an anomaly that we described as a suitcase-sized lump of foam. And we saw it in these two units. The piece of foam came off the the external fuel tank, and it looked like a snowball. It just came down. 82 seconds into the flight, it came down and hit the shuttle's left wing. It was like a snowball, as this thing just disintegrated, as the piece of foam disintegrated. And from what we could see, there was no damage to Columbia. But we couldn't see it quite right. Now, Columbia's wing root is made of reinforced carbon-carbon, RCC, which next to diamonds is the strongest substance that we know of. And, well, this thing hitting into foam, well, we would think, well, it's not that bad. Foam, how bad is foam? Not that different to you hitting a styrofoam block on the highway. It was inconceivable in hindsight that we could have gone through that kind of impact and expect there to be no damage. But nonetheless, that's what we allowed ourselves to do. And so a week into the mission, we email Rick Husband informing him of the foam strike, but we also tell him that the foam strike is not a cause for concern. So after 15 days of experiments, the mission had been an incredible success. We were all extremely proud of them. Almost nothing had gone wrong except for a leaky refrigerator on the mission. Their work with cancer research had been so successful. We'd gotten some tremendous data out of the mission. And it was just perfect. And then on February 1st, we gave Columbia a go to begin her re-entry. At speeds in excess of 12,000 miles an hour, Columbia's belly began to heat up as friction with the atmosphere started up. And so she's coming in. In mission control, we have a big screen that all of the flight controllers can look up at and see, right, the orbiter is here as it's coming in over the west coast of the United States, and we see its ground track in towards Kennedy. Well, that screen stopped updating about 20 minutes before landing, or before scheduled landing. And so we send a voice message up to the crew asking them to update their position. Because we have the TDRS satellites in orbit, shuttles no longer lose radio contact as they come down because they can bounce it off a satellite and then send it back down. So we asked the crew just to give us their condition. Well, they never responded. And you know, sometimes we get a loss of data, so it's not that bad. Well, this one lasted a bit longer than usual, and me sitting watching the landing at home, I started to feel a little bit uneasy as I watched this ground track not updating, and you know, you see the flight director Leroy Kane starting to look a little bit worried when the ECOM guy starts saying that we're losing telemetry from the temperature transducers on the left side of the orbiter. And then about a minute after that, we get an internal temperature spike inside Columbia and then lose all telemetry. And everyone in mission control goes a little bit quiet because we really don't know what's going on. So we have 4 temperature transducers out, spike in temperature, and we have low tire pressure warnings going off. And you know, we train for these contingencies over and over again. We train for them, and we input all our solutions, and nothing happens. And then some of the guys who were not involved in the landing, who were just sitting doing paperwork, switch on the news, and we get live television coverage, I mean almost instantly, and it showed Columbia coming in this one bright streak that then split into multiple streaks, and that's when we realized that we lost the Columbia. They were just 16 minutes from home. All 7 crew members of STS-107 Space Shuttle Columbia are lost. And Leroy Kane then stands up and holds his face in his hands, and then he looks up to his ground controller and he says, "Lock the doors, no phone calls, off-site." And we have to figure out what to do. Within the day, US rescue forces are in the area of East Texas, where parts of Columbia had fallen in over 2,000 sites. Debris from Columbia is spread across 600 miles of East Texas countryside. And if you want to know anything about the backbone of the United States, you have to go and see some of these people who have, some of these local volunteers who went out with the rescue forces to go and pick up parts of Columbia that had fallen in forests and fields and towns, and started to piece together what happened. We actually physically rebuild the belly of Columbia in her hangar at Kennedy Space Center after we ship all this debris out. And that confirms what we suspected, that It was the foam. It had knocked a bowling ball sized hole in the left wing of Columbia, and that's what caused the stresses to rip apart the orbiter. For the second time, we ground the space shuttle. All three orbiters, Discovery, Atlantis and Endeavour, are pulled apart, and we wonder if we're ever going to put them back together again. We were going to refurbish them, and then we suddenly think, well, should we really start flying this thing again? There were people all over the country screaming for us not to do this again. And Eileen Collins eventually, after the loss of Columbia, put the disaster in context of the astronaut. She said, "We've lost 7 of our dear friends. It's a terrible tragedy. It's very difficult for me to go back and relive. Some people said, we don't want to risk astronauts' lives anymore. We need to stop doing this." Well, the astronauts don't feel that way. We fly for our country, we fly for humanity, we fly for exploration, we fly for a variety of reasons. And we don't stop flying because we have accidents. No shuttle flies for 2.5 years. From 2004 to 2005, from 2003, 4, 5, the shuttle is grounded. In 2004, President Bush made a very significant announcement that we will finish what we started, meaning the International Space Station. We will meet our objectives to our 15 international partners. In 2010, after nearly 30 years of duty, the space shuttle will be retired from service. Even though each orbiter was designed to fly 100 missions, the NASA review on the Columbia disaster called the vehicles aging spacecraft, with the odds of losing another orbiter with each successive mission. And so we will fly the shuttle again, but with the almost single-minded focus of completing the International Space Station, and then we would stop and let something new take over.